The history of Batman is filled with plenty of ups and downs, and as a Batman fan, I find it fascinating to see the different directions authors have gone with the Caped Crusader. For example, Batman by Tom King was a prolonged, controversial, and character-altering Batman story. Some fans loved this run, and some fans, myself included, found it to be a drawn-out and poorly written tale. So when the run ended and Tom King exited on the character of Batman, you can imagine tensions were high as people were excited to see what the next chapter in Batman's career would hold. So when it was announced that James Tynion would be the ongoing author, it's safe to say that fans were excited. Reason being, James Tynion at this point in his career was a established author with a handful of impactful Batman stories under his belt, including his work on Batman Eternal, Batman and Robin Eternal, and perhaps his most notable Batman work at the time, which was his Detective Comics run. All of these were great Bat family focused tales that built upon the mythology of Gotham, the Bat family, and of course, Batman. Check out my Batman playlist if you want a deeper analysis of any of these stories, but point being, in 2020, Tynion had a weathered Batman career and had proven himself as a worthy Batman author. I mean, his first ever published work as a comic book author was Batman New 52, which is not something a lot of people can say. So giving Tynion the chance to write the titular Batman title all on his own just made sense. I myself have never read James Tynion's run in its entirety, but earlier this year I got my hands on Tynion's Batman Omnibus Volume 1 and Volume 2. However, when I read this run in the omnibus format, I discovered this was a Batman story that subverted my expectations in the best way possible. Of course, Tynion delivers with some fast-paced, high-octane Batman action, but buried in the epic action is a story that's about more than just Batman. So join me in this video as we take a look at why Tynion's Batman is a world of depravity. Now, for clarity's sake, I didn't just read Tynion's Batman run. I read all of the issues collected in Tynion's Batman Omnibus Volume 1 and 2. So I'm going to be discussing Tynion's Batman run, which takes place starting in the pages of Batman issue 86 and ends in Batman issue 117. I'm also going to be covering Batman annuals, some tie-in issues, Punchline issue number 1, and Tynion's Joker series, which lasted for 15 issues. Reading all of these stories together feels like it's the best way to experience Tynion's stint on Batman, because all of these issues bleed into each other, forming one beautiful tapestry. So let's take a look at these stories, all of which starts in Batman issue 86 with an arc titled Their Dark Designs. In this story, we follow Batman as he uncovers the history and motives behind an elusive new villain known as the Designer. As the story unfurls, Tynion thrusts Batman into intense fight sequences, while also plotting a narrative that cleverly places a handful of Batman's iconic rogues in the background. So you get to see Batman duke it out with Deathstroke in an intense fight sequence. You get to see Catwoman running around with villains like the Penguin, the Joker, and the Riddler, both in her present, but also all the way back in her past. And you also get to see some pretty neat flashback scenes that highlight the early days of Batman and Robin. Moments like this make the story feel familiar. Tynion retools the iconography of these momentous characters while consistently leading his story in a direction that builds towards a grander and highly captivating mystery. Is Their Dark Designs a revolutionary Batman story? No, not at all. Did the mystery, the blockbuster action, and the familiar set dressing of Batman's rogues make this a engaging tale? Absolutely. If I had to compare this story to something similar, I would honestly liken it to the Batman Arkham Knight game. Both Arkham Knight and Their Dark Designs features Batman taking on this new, mysterious villain while simultaneously facing off against a huge array of familiar faces. And most importantly, both of these stories feature action-packed feats of pure aura. When I see a Tony S. Daniel art piece where Batman is hunched over in the rain in a battle-damaged suit, blood dripping from his torn mask while one of his foes lay demobilized at his feet, I feel like a monkey getting a dopamine boost. For lack of a better term, the image is just awesome, and I can't help but stare at it in awe, and that goes for a lot of the art in this book. You have Tony S. Daniel, March Goulam, and Jorge Jimenez, just to name a few. Their Dark Designs at its core is about the ongoing game of cat and mouse Batman finds himself playing with the criminals of Gotham. Tynion pulls on the history of Batman, keying us into moments from Batman's past to highlight how much has changed since Bruce put on the cape and cowl. There's a really great moment where Selina talks to Bruce about this, where where Selina tells him how it felt different now compared to back when they first started. In the early days of Batman's career, his villains were undoubtedly committing crime, but the psychopathic tendencies that drove criminals' decision-making wasn't as prominent. In the early days, Batman was fighting crime, while in the context of Batman's contemporary career, it feels like he's fighting evil. The threats Batman faces have continued to escalate, and Tynion uses flashback scenes specifically to highlight the spiritual and physical explosion and darkness that continues to consume Gotham City. In the flashback scenes, the Riddler looks young, his suit is bright and green, his smile is coy, and he holds himself with the posture and confidence of a young man. Meanwhile, you jump forward to the modern context and Riddler is a shell of what he once was. His skin has sunken into his bones, his eyes are dilated, his body is scarred, and his green fit is nowhere to be found. Instead, he hunches over in a discerning posture, clinging to his cane like it's the one thing that grounds him to reality. The Riddler's transformation is jarring. He went from a grandiose trickster to a frail, amphetamine-dependent lunatic. Look at Catwoman 2 and you'll see something similar, albeit less drastic. Her old costume is a bright purple suit. You'll see her running around with a smile, purple lipstick, and her hair flowing in the wind. While she's a criminal, I think her costume design radiates with a undeniable jovial energy. But then when you jump forward and look at Catwoman's modern design, it's all black. She doesn't smile as much, and there's a deep sadness that's often expressed in her eyes. Catwoman's tenure in Gotham literally sucked the color and hope out of her character. On the surface, people might see this and chalk it up to the book paying homage to classic character designs, but if you analyze what the story represents, the transformation of these character designs into a darker state of being meshes perfectly with the central theme of the story. I mean, the arc is literally titled Their Dark Designs. Narratively, I viewed Their Dark Designs as a commentary about the predeterministic fate of Batman. What once started out as a noble crusade against crime has transformed into something deeper. It is a self-fulfilling prophecy. As Batman grows stronger and more powerful, so do his foes. It's a circular yin and yang-esque style of growth, where the empowerment of Batman's righteous mission is matched with the rising tide of evil, except now, in Tynion's run, Alfred is dead, the Bat family is fractured, and Bruce's relationship is on the rocks. So what happens when Batman continues to fight, but he no longer has the grounding of the people he loves? It's an intriguing pitch, and the designer as a villain is a great way to juxtapose Bruce's tumultuous state of being. Pair that message with the jaw-dropping action found within the pages of this first arc, and I would say Their Dark Designs is a strong start to Tynion's run. Immediately after this arc, Tynion leads directly into a brand new arc that continues to build on the idea of how evil continues to escalate in Gotham City, with the story known as Joker War. Real quick, if you guys are liking the video, make sure to drop a comment, subscribe, and leave a like. It goes a long way when it comes to helping out the channel. Anyways, Joker War is a story that on the surface also feels really familiar. Without delving too deep into spoilers, Joker War follows Batman dealing with how the Clown Prince of Crime once again takes over Gotham in a spectacular display of chaos. Right off the bat, I rolled my eyes at the start of this story, because come on, how many times has Gotham been taken over by villains? I feel like every other Batman run usually culminates with some villain ruling over the city. So while, yeah, the scope of the story is ambitious, it's also played out. Also, it's a Joker story, which gave me pause. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy a good Joker story, but at this point in my Batman reading journey, I found the Joker to be played out. But I get it. If you're writing Batman, you're gonna want to play around with all the toys in his toy box, and the Joker is a pretty big toy. Plus, Tynion is a great horror and suspense writer. His titles like Something is Killing the Children, Nice House on the Lake, and Department of Truth proves that he has the ability to craft engaging, suspenseful, and all-around entertaining stories centered around ethereal and horror-focused villains. So, was Joker War any good? Joker War starts out strong, as Tynion continues to build on a brand new character he introduced in his previous arc, known as Punchline. She's a young, college-aged girl in purple spandex, leather, and some light clown makeup, meaning off the bat, her design and her proximity to the Joker makes it seem like she could just be a Harley Quinn knockoff. But I'm happy to report that I found Punchline to be a very compelling character. I was particularly fond of the moments in which Harley Quinn found herself head-to-head with Punchline. Seeing Harley, a woman who was once a victim of the Joker's psychopathic manipulation, try to reason with Punchline, a young girl who's fallen down a dark path of Joker-inspired radicalization, made me realize how nuanced the world of Gotham is. It's not a black and white binary where good and evil is clearly outlined. Rather, every person in Gotham is influenced by a variety of factors. The Joker, the Batman, the police department, the average thug, the average citizen, and so many different actors in Gotham City make the city a distinct place in terms of socialization. Punchline and Harley Quinn are cut from the same cloth. They are both young women who were influenced by the Joker in a way that ultimately turned them evil. But the contrast between the person Harley was and the path she went down versus the person Punchline is and the path she continues to go down is really different. And I think it's cool how Tynion is able to communicate a commonality with both of these characters while still making them their own unique thing. Besides Harley Quinn and Punchline, the other thing Joker War does well, in my opinion, is follow up on the blowback of Tom King's Batman run. Spoiler alert for Tom King's Batman, but at the end of King's Batman, Bane ends up killing Alfred. Tynion's Batman came out right after King's run ended, so Tynion takes that moment and interpolates it into his story in a way that was much needed. In Joker War, like with most Joker stories, Batman ends up getting sprayed with this Joker toxin that makes him go crazy and makes him hallucinate. One major reoccurring hallucination Batman experiences is the vision of Alfred. And let me tell you something, the use of a hallucinatory Alfred was emotionally devastating. In Tom King's run, Bruce doesn't really deal with the ramifications of losing his father figure. It kind of just happens and they move forward. In Tynion's run, however, watching Bruce fall into a drug-induced psychosis whilst talking to his deceased father figure is tragic. The Joker is at war with the city, the Bat family is fractured, Batman is incapacitated, and Alfred is gone. It's a perfect recipe for Bruce to fall apart, and watching him lose control of both his body and his mind while the one man who loved him unconditionally talks to him with the warmth and love he so desperately needs, but then that one man is nothing more than a hallucination, to me is just a perfect storytelling motif. Overall, the Joker War arc is decent. We get introduced to interesting new characters like Punchline, who brings out a different side to the Joker, and funnily enough, Tynion does have a really good voice for the Joker. The problem is that there's no specific Joker moment that stuck with me. Instead, this arc feels like a very by-the-numbers Joker story. However, hands down, the best part of this story isn't the action, it's the deeper introspective journey Bruce goes down in order to fully rationalize and overcome the gaping hole the death of Alfred has left in his heart. And for that alone, I gotta say, this is a pretty damn good read. As Joker War ends, issue 101 sets up a brand new status quo. The Joker has been dealt with, for the most part. Bruce has dealt with the trauma of Alfred's death, and in the midst of all of this chaos, Bruce is finally starting to rediscover the value of family. It's a nice midpoint in Tynion's run, because it demonstrates a positive character progression, all while Bruce is readjusting. He's trying to continue to be Batman, but he's also forced to be a leaner, less extravagant Batman, one who doesn't have the around-the-clock support of Alfred. Then, in issue 102 to 105, we get a new arc titled Ghost Stories. In this arc, we meet a mysterious character from Bruce Wayne's past, someone who seemed to have trained with Bruce and knew the power a young Bruce Wayne was capable of wielding long before he was Batman. I gotta be honest with you though, the Ghost Stories arc was also just kind of okay. We've gotten a lot of stories about people Bruce knew from his past coming back into the picture, so there was nothing about this arc that felt particularly fresh. And while there is some fun action in here, and we get to meet a brand new character by the name of Clownhunter who's kind of interesting, all around there's nothing much I could really say or analyze because it just didn't resonate with me. Right after this though, Tynion continues to build upon what is perhaps his greatest contribution to the Batman mythos, and that is Punchline. In the Batman Omnibus, following the Ghost Stories arc, we get a 40-page one-shot short story titled Punchline. This issue follows the character Punchline, aka Alexis K, as we learn more about her, how she became this villain, and we follow the legal trouble she faces for being the Joker's right-hand man during the Joker War event. After the Punchline issue, we then continue to follow the Punchline story in Tynion's Joker series, with Punchline's entire arc being concluded in issue 15 of Joker. I gotta say, Punchline is perhaps the most interesting new character Tynion has introduced, probably because her character arc feels eerily similar to what's happening today. Punchline is a Gen Z college-aged kid. She grew up in the age of the internet with an abundance of information available to her. When you look at the internet today, the success of online content and digital platforms is usually contingent on those ideas fitting into a niche. The internet has almost never been a homogeneous place, but as I record this video in 2026, it feels like the most successful types of online content appeal to specific groups of people rather than trying to appeal to everyone. That's why when creators go viral, many of them are people you've probably never heard of. Online creators succeed within their respective fields, and sometimes they end up gaining cult followings, but a viral creator is usually known within a niche. One specific brand of a niche content that is pretty popular these days is the true crime podcast / video essay niche. These are people who make content focused on retelling true stories about violent crimes, and a lot of the time they can be pretty graphic and disturbing. Personally, I'm not a fan of this type of content because it makes me upset. I don't want to hear about the horrific tragedy of someone's last moments, but there are a lot of people that do love this content, and there's dozens if not hundreds of creators who make their full-time living by producing true crime podcast videos. Most people consume this content harmlessly, with pure intentions. Some people might have intrusive thoughts when consuming this content. They might fantasize about violence or murder with no intention of acting on it. But then some people engage with this content and allow those intrusive thoughts to manifest. There's an excitement they feel when hearing about the brutality of real-life murder. Imagine this exact scenario, except it's happening in Gotham City, a city with a seemingly infinite number of true crime scenarios available to exploit. That's kind of who Punchline is. She's an examination on how the depravity of Gotham would spill over into online spaces. We often think about the violence of Gotham in a literal sense. We think about the endless amounts of chaos that consumes the city and destroys the lives of its inhabitants. And while Punchline's story addresses that tangible harm, it more so focuses on the psychological effects that type of environment would have on a young, developing mind. Pair all of that with the fact that she has unlimited access to the internet, and Punchline's psychopathy doesn't seem random. She feels like a product of her environment. But this type of fringe internet radicalization isn't something that is purely fictional. Sadly, it happens quite often. People with untreated mental illness often find themselves spiraling due to how easy the internet makes it for them to fall into a vacuum of unrestricted violent content. The backstory and continuing narrative of Punchline speaks to that problem. Her story examines the struggle of overlooked Gen Z youth who all too quickly freefall into a reality of self-isolation, desensitization, and eventual radicalization. As Punchline's story continues to unravel in the pages of the Joker series, also penned by Tynion, we get to see Punchline face the court of public opinion, as her trial is a high-profile case that gets a lot of press coverage. Seeing how the public responds to Punchline, especially especially the younger Gen Z demographic who ends up sympathizing with her in some instances, is also really fascinating to watch unravel, because in a lot of ways they are just like her. They are young people who are also susceptible to the fringe corners of internet depravity. It's twisted, but it's scarily accurate how quickly some people are to idolize and romanticize the actions of Punchline, all of which happens unsurprisingly on internet forums. Analyzing the deeper subtext of Punchline's story reminded me a lot of Tynion's image series, The Department of Truth. The Department of Truth is a book that is all about conspiracy theories. In the world of this book, if enough people believe a conspiracy theory to be true, then that conspiracy theory will become reality. The politics of 2026 sometimes feels too surreal to be a reality. And when you scroll on TikTok, it's so easy to fall into a rabbit hole of reactionary conspiratorial content. I don't think conspiracy theories are becoming a reality because of TikTok, but I do think so many people engage with content on a base level. People don't want to go out there and do their own research. Instead, folks seek out confirmation bias, and it's created a world where a lot of people have beliefs that are not grounded in objective truth. At its core, I think The Department of Truth is a story about highlighting to audiences the dangers of reactionary pipelines. And when you compare that to the message and the themes found in this Punchline story, it's quite similar. It's very obvious that Tynion has his finger on the pulse when it comes to understanding the ways in which information in the age of the internet is jumbled, reactionary, and sometimes nonsensical. And I appreciate how subtly he conveys that reality in his works. Unrelated to the deeper themes found in the Punchline story, but I also really liked how Harper Row, aka Bluebird, makes an appearance in these issues. If you're unfamiliar, Harper Row is a character who was actually introduced by Scott Snyder in the pages of New 52 Batman. Harper would later appear in Batman Eternal, Batman and Robin Eternal, and Detective Comics, all of which are books written by James Tynion. And it's nice to see him continue to utilize her as a character all of these years later. A lot of folks have their issues with Harper, but me personally, I like her a lot. Specifically, I like how she represents the Gen Z counterpart to Punchline. Just like Punchline, Harper is tapped in. She has her finger on the cultural pulse, and she can see how and why people are falling for Punchline's appeals, but she's not buying it. Harper is a glimmer of hope, reminding people that yes, the internet can be a dark and scary place, but there are folks who use that fear to grow and turn into heroes in spite of it all. All around, the Punchline stories found in both Volume 1 and Volume 2 of Tynion's Batman Omnibus editions are clearly not about Batman, but they add to the world Tynion built in his Batman run in a very transformative way. I hate it when Batman runs force other Bat-related titles to synergize with an event. I don't need to see Nightwing's response to the Joker War in Nightwing issue 73. What Tynion did with the Joker miniseries is so much more interesting. He addresses the events of this run by reframing the conversation to be about something other than Batman. He showed the audience a darker reflection of the real world, posing questions about the internet, online culture, and the dangers that come with all of that. I know Punchline is a niche character with a die-hard fanbase, and after reading all these issues, I get it. She's really unique and has a lot of depth behind her, and I'm really glad these issues were included in the Omnibus. I think you should definitely check them out. Within the pages of the Joker issues though, there's an A plot and there's a B plot. The B plot is about Punchline, and the A plot, well, can you guess what the A plot is about? That's right, it's about the Joker. I'm actually joking. The Joker does make an appearance in these issues, but truthfully, the Joker series is primarily centered around the character of Jim Gordon. Now, the pitch of the Joker miniseries is fairly simple. Jim Gordon is a retired cop, and he gets recruited by a mysteriously rich benefactor to hunt down and kill the Joker. This makes for a really intriguing premise, because James Gordon and the Joker have a long and weathered history. The Clown Prince of Crime has tormented Jim Gordon and his family for decades, putting them through absolute hell. So when Gordon is given an opportunity to cross the line and take out the monster that's done nothing but bring him pain, it makes sense why he's going to bite. And then you gotta ask the age-old question: will Gordon cross the line and unlawfully take a life? I'm not gonna spoil the outcome, but this topic is a reoccurring motif throughout the run, and I like that. It's interesting to see how the mind of this retired cop works, how he parses through information, how he justifies his actions, and how he acts based off a presumptive outcome. What I'm getting at is Tynion's voice for James Gordon is on point. There is an inherent gruffness to it that always leaps out of the page, but it's never over the top. It feels consistent with who Gordon is as a character. That being said, the set pieces in this book can get really explosive. They feel almost too goofy to be real, but the griminess of Gordon's dialogue never clashes with the hyperbolic nature of the action. It's almost like Tynion is taking the tonality of a book like Year One, but injecting it with the grandiose nature of modern Batman comics, and it works effortlessly. Speaking of Year One, in issue 5 of Tynion's Joker series, we get a flashback story showing us the daily life of Gordon during his years as a rookie cop. This issue is so great in the way it demonstrates the mentality Gordon wields in order to keep making sense of the chaos. Gotham is a depraved, violent, and twisted place, and working as a cop exposes you to the pure evil that lurks within the city. In this issue, Gordon is constantly on edge, but also finds ways to rationalize to himself why he needs to keep doing what he's doing. And reading these stories, you can see the toll this job takes on his mental health and personal life. Also, Francesco Francavella's art in this issue is beautiful, and he pays homage to Mazzucchelli's stylized Year One artwork in a beautiful way. So reading this specific issue, there's a nostalgic look to it that really hammers home the aspect of remembrance that Tynion establishes with his narrative. As the Joker story continues to unravel, Gordon finds himself in the middle of a massive conspiracy. What's most notable to me about this story is the deep dive we get into the life of Gordon. The way Jim Gordon interacts with Batman's rogues, the Bat family, Batman, and of course his daughter, Barbara Gordon, is what makes this a compelling read for me. I've talked about this in length in other videos, but I'm just a sucker for the Bat family, and I love to see how they bounce off each other and the different type of ways they approach the mission of Batman. And in this book, you get plenty of that. In a lot of ways, it kind of feels like a spiritual successor to the distillation of Bat family energy found in a story like Batman and Robin Eternal. Is Tynion's 15-issue Joker series the most consequential book in the world? Not really. Is it a riveting mystery? Sure. However, what I remembered this book for was the horrifying moments. It's the deep introspection Gordon feels when dealing with the ethereal foes that terrorize Gotham. It's a grounded approach to a fantastical world, and I was on the edge of my seat after each issue. Gordon's tale is a action-packed conspiracy with twists and deeply depraved turns, and it reminds me of Tynion's creator-owned work. It's like if Something is Killing the Children met the Department of Truth and they had a baby, except that baby is just wearing a skin of a Batman comic. But let's get back to Batman because we still have a handful of Batman issues to discuss. We left off with Batman issue 105, so we'll continue with Batman issue 106, which marks the start of Tynion's penultimate Batman arc, titled The Cowardly Lion. Unfortunately, I don't really have a lot to say about this arc. It continues to do what Tynion started doing in Joker War, in how Bruce's status quo gets switched up and both Batman and Bruce are forced to adapt to new circumstances. In this arc, we see Gotham change its perception towards the Batman as the mayor launches a campaign to make all vigilantism illegal, and we get some standout moments from characters like Harley Quinn and Ghostmaker, but there's nothing super memorable here. What did stand out to me was an issue that came out alongside these issues that was titled Batman's Secret Files Miracle Molly. This issue establishes the backstory of a brand new villain known as Miracle Molly. I don't want to spoil it, but I will say the story follows a young woman trying to navigate the cutthroat world of white-collar work. She yearns for career growth and opportunity, but the incessant greed of capitalism paired with the misogynistic energy that dominates the world of business makes it impossible for her to succeed. It's a tragic tale, but it's one that's as old as time. workplaces love to exploit the labor of its workers with minimal recognition and pay. You can work for a company your whole life, but when you die, your memory fades and they're quick to replace you. Pair that with the fact that in 2026, women in the workplace still suffer from patriarchally backed norms where casual sexism, workplace harassment, and internalized misogyny often goes unchallenged, and it's depressing to realize how soul-sucking life can be when working both under capitalism and patriarchy. Miracle Molly's backstory is a sobering portrait of how those conditions can ultimately push a good-hearted person to their breaking point. Miracle Molly was a standout character that appeared during this time, and she comes fully into fruition in the final chapter of Tynion's Batman arc with the arc known as Fear State. Similar to the Cowardly Lot arc, I found it difficult to extrapolate much from this story. Fear State is still entertaining though. It's basically about the Scarecrow taking over the city, and Batman just has to go face to face with him. And once again, it's a premise that's a little tired. We just came off Joker War, where Joker takes over the city, and now it's Scarecrow. Like, come on, man. We don't need to do these huge epic events all the time, but alas, that's what we got. What I will say is that I enjoyed the deeper moments of character reflection Tynion gives us in the last arc. What resonated with me was how Tynion explored the concept of trauma. Gotham is a collective hell for literally everyone. Almost everyone in Gotham City has some form of trauma, but Tynion doesn't go down a nihilistic woe is me path. Rather, he ends his run by emphasizing the importance of optimism. Scarecrow's fear toxin is a literal embodiment of psychological torment, but I think what Tynion argues is that the solution to these roadblocks isn't to dwell on the past, nor is it to ignore the problem as a whole. Rather, it's to find ways to uplift yourself and others with the spirit of community in mind. That is what the portrait of Batman is supposed to represent. The fear of the bat is a shared pain we're all supposed to share. Maybe you're not scared of bats, but you're scared of something, and that fear is often rooted in some deep-seated trauma. The project of Batman is about recognizing that fear and acknowledging that trauma, but using it to build something better. And I think Tynion demonstrates that with the climax of this arc by using the character progression of Batman alongside other characters like Miracle Molly, Ghostmaker, and some other people to symbolize a moment of literal and spiritual growth, calling for people to believe in something. And I think that's a really beautiful message and a great way to end this run. In conclusion, Tynion's Batman is a hodgepodge of stories that feel familiar, but when I put the book down, what I found myself recalling wasn't the big explosive moments of blockbuster action. Instead, I remembered the thriller and horror-centric storytelling that Tynion subtly employs in the more stripped back moments of his story. Punchline's eerily familiar yet shockingly dark backstory was insane and entertaining. Gordon's neo-noir pursuit of the Joker was horrifying and depraved, and Batman's constant battle within himself was emotionally potent and really depressing. And I think these different emotional components made it so that this book has a lot of value on the reread. It's a tale that is packed to the brim with twists, turns, and moments of insanity, and that's why I think Tynion's Batman is a world of depravity. But have y'all read this run? What do you think of it? Let me know down below. Also, if you like this video and you're looking to get collected edition comics like Tynion's Batman Omnibus, make sure to check out the channel sponsor, panelboundcomics.com. It's a website where you can get collected edition comics for up to 50% discounts. And you can use my code YUHU on checkout to save $2, or you can use my code YUHUSHIP to save 5% on an order of 4 or more books. If you made it this far, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see y'all in the next one.